So, welcome to Controlled Chaos. I am Shana, and you want to introduce yourself?
I am Marcel Roston, survivor of suicide loss and social media content creator.
All right. So, I had actually heard you on another podcast and kind of just talking about your story, your life, where things had kind of gone for you. And I know that you're in recovery. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. My story, like a lot of other people, starts, when I was really young and grew up in a pretty slow, sleepy beach town in San Diego, Ocean Beach, and kind of surfed and skated and played basketball with all the other kids, and um, grew up for the times as normal as I could. My mom and dad, they didn't really party that much, like in front of me, but they didn't hide the weed either. My mom and dad weren't big drinkers, so I didn't have a bunch of booze and stuff around the house or um, any other drugs. But I grew up a 70s kid, man. Cruising the streets in low top vans and board shorts. And then when my mother and father got divorced, that's when all of the ugly secrets came out. The discipline that my dad gave me had a name, and it was called abuse. The neglect that I suffered from my mom wasn't called, she was just too busy. It was really identified as she didn't fucking know what kind of love I needed, right? And for that matter, I didn't. I was a 12-year-old kid in 1986, man, and dysfunctional families weren't something you talked about, you know?
Right.
Right. So I kind of grew up, luckily, watching my older brother and my cousins and uncles and stuff really get into the dope game heavy. So therefore, I didn't, because I saw how it wrecked them, but it didn't stop me from being a recreational user. And then that recreational user turned into the drug addict that,
Right.
that lived to use and used to live by any means and by all means, um, to the point where looking back, I made a conscious decision to get high instead of take care of my kids. And so, as a result of my actions, my kids were taken to Child Protective Services at the ages, they were about 2 years old, 3 years old.
Okay. So,
And
you had custody of your kids and then they were taken?
um, no, I still lived with their mom, and their mom still lived with me. And we
Okay.
were,
Was
we
she
weren't,
using also?
yeah, we weren't married. We were just two parents using. She was reuniting with her three older children, and I wanted to have babies of my own.
Yeah.
I went into love and a relationship with this woman, and with the thought of just having, one child, and then, I was fucking blessed with two girls, and that, made me really kind of embrace being a dad, man. You
Mm.
know, and being a dad. Um, Out of like dysfunction is kind of weird, because like I didn't really have a loving, caring, honest, open, like accessible dad. I had a dad that did coke and beat my mom and beat me and cheated on my family and cheated on my mom and stuff. So as far as good examples coming up,
Mhm.
I didn't have a lot, right? So I had to find them. Um, and I didn't find him in the dope game.
Right.
I didn't. I found him in the meetings at Narcotics Anonymous when my babies were young. They were about 3 years old when they came back. 4 years old when they came back. into my home after I got out of jail and did the whole CPS thing. They came home and I continued to go to meetings because not only was I using at the time or clean, I wanted to learn like where the fuck my coping mechanisms came from, like
Right.
why I thought the way I thought, because I grew up with my mom who was super loving and enabling and caretaking and real dismissive and shit. And like that wasn't me. I was really angry and agitated and violent like my dad, but those two behaviors presented themselves in my life in different times and in different ways, right?
Right.
And I didn't have like a credible resource that I could trust to tell me like the real deal, you know?
Mhm.
Because my dad was out of my life at like 12, 13, and he would come in just to terrorize me and fucking be weird. And so I lived with my mom and it was me and my mom, you know, and from 13 to 18, um, I kind of like protected my mom, you know, and
Right.
um, and that was just being a product of a dysfunctional home and being the last baby in the house, you know. Um, so when she left, I took all of that maternal instinct and that maternal knowledge that I had learned by just being raised by my mom,
Mhm.
and that's what I poured into my daughters and my babies as well, was that unconditional love, right? And was it fear-based? Yeah. Yes, the fuck it was, because I didn't want to be just like my dad.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like for some drug addicts and some people in recovery, like they go into using because of like shame and pain and fear and all that of repeating the steps that they were taught, you know? And I did too, a little bit, but I wanted to learn how to get out of it, you know?
Yeah. So you've been in
So
recovery for how long?
ooh, it's been like 22 years.
22 years. So ever since your daughters were pretty young.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
huge. That's
Yeah.
huge.
I didn't go through their entire life clean and sober. I didn't go through their entire life in recovery. Um, as they grew older, um, I grew away from my support group. I grew away from my fellowship, and I took my 12 steps and my time, and I thought that, you know, everything was back to normal, you know. So I recreated and I did more research, but for the most part, I was introduced to recovery 22 years ago. I have not put any powder in my body in almost 20 years. I
Right.
suffer I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I am medically prescribed the prescription of cannabis. So, am I sober and clean by recovery standards? I am not, but I do practice the principles of recovery in my daily life. I don't any longer use to live or live to use. My medication is managed by myself and a huge level of accountability.
Mhm.
Um, so the principles of Narcotics Anonymous have been a very, very big part of my life. And I have been aware both when I was in accordance with them as well as when I strayed and my life got unmanageable and dysfunctional. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I think I know when I started this podcast, one of the things that I for sure wanted to make one of my values is that I don't babysit other people's recovery. I learned about the 12 steps in AA, I think in 2011. It took me a long time to figure out what was the right match for me and what was the right,
Right.
set of tools for me. I've been sober for 3 years, but I've really been in AA for 11. So I
Right.
think everybody takes what they can. And when I introduce the program to people, that's what I hope they do, is they take the things they learn, the things that help them, and they use them, right? And the things that they
Yeah.
don't use
They
them,
leave.
because
They leave for
yeah,
somebody else,
there's
dude.
there's nothing in this world that works for every single person. I worked in recovery at a huge recovery center for a long time, and I could not get myself to get sober even like 30 days straight, right? And I finally moved home to get my shit together. And I went to my doctor and I was like, I've been doing this meeting thing for like 10 years now and I can't do it, and I can't, it's not working. And she, what is wrong? I did my fifth step 7 times.
Yeah.
It didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And she was like, have you ever tried the Vivitrol shot? And I was like, no, I don't even know what it is. She's like,
Yeah.
you've been in like the treatment world for 10 years. You don't know what Vivitrol is? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I got on Vivitrol. I never have used again. Never even had the urge to drink again. So
Right.
I just, I was always told like you shouldn't use medication to manage your, problem or anything like that. And it's like, well, why would I waste all of these years
Right.
to continue being miserable and drinking myself to death when I could have just taken a little medication and it helped me? Maybe it's
Right.
not right for you, but it was right for me. Right.
Right.
So I really try not to judge other people's stuff. And I try to like give people what I have and the tools that I have. And sometimes I take their tools, but I think there really is no one shoe fits all in this. There can't be.
Well, I it's it's interesting the different dynamic between recovery programs. And I say that between Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is like the grandfather of all grandfathers. It's written and attested to by Bill W. and millions and millions and millions of people worldwide. Now, Narcotics Anonymous is a derivative of that program. It's almost synonymous if you look at it. However, they're vastly different in attendance, right?
Right.
Whereas the chemicals, right, the plant, the physical part, not the liquid, is recognized as a drug and the alcohol is included, right? So there's
Right.
different types of recovery in those different types of worlds, right? And with Alcoholics Anonymous, I've never been a big drinker, like
Mm-hmm.
ever. I mean, I'll go and get smashed. Don't get it wrong. I'll get smashed. But it's never been my comfort that I go back to when I experience a childhood trauma that comes back or a relationship trauma or something like that. It's not my first go-to comfort, right? But
Right.
it doesn't make me any better or any worse than someone that does.
Right. So what you're saying is it's not your drug of choice, right? Like it's just not
Right.
the
It's
one that you
not it,
say you're
it's
out
not
of control with.
right. Like if I were to die tomorrow of a drug induced reason, alcohol would not be on the list.
That sums it
But
up, right?
right. But like as cause of death, it wouldn't be considered. But like marijuana, yeah. Cocaine, probably. Crystal meth, yeah, it's a fucking strong shot, you know? But those are the things that I'm aware of that I have difficulty coping with, right? And like you had touched on, your recovery is yours, right?
Mhm.
Every every page you've turned in your life has a different specific fingerprint on the earmark, if you will,
Right. Well, and
right?
even as far as like antidepressants, if I go to the doctor and you go to the doctor, chances are we're probably going to be on something different, right?
Yeah.
So I don't
Right.
know how it can be different with recovery, right? We all have to be able to find, and there's a reason that recovery rates are at what they're at. They're very, very low that people actually stay in sobriety, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a reason for that. And I really think sometimes it is because the recovery community can be very judgmental over what you're
Oh yeah.
supposed to do and
Oh
what you're not
yeah.
supposed to do. And
Yeah.
people feel not accepted and then they don't want to go, right? Well,
Well,
no, you should be able to have a community, whether I do everything the same as you do or not, shouldn't determine whether I'm allowed in your club, right? But
right. And when I spoke at
it's a little
when I
bit that way.
and when I speak at meetings, I tell people, here's the deal, man. Before you say a word about the dude next to you that has like 25 minutes clean or 25 minutes sober, like I want you to vividly remember the last time you got absolutely like self-loathingly horribly wasted, right? And once you get back to that point, think about it. There wasn't a spot for you like there is for this 25-second dude. So
Right.
he deserves a spot just like you do, and you're part of the reason that he's able to come here.
Yeah. And that
You
should
know what
make
I'm saying?
having being a place where someone can come when they need something, right?
Right, but being clean and in sobriety and in recovery doesn't mean like you're free from like assholes and douchebags. Because like when people get clean and they get sober, you really see like the work that they have to do that they've hidden from, you know?
That's very true. There's a lot of work
So
that goes.
you, yeah, getting clean and stopping using the drugs, that's the easy part,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
It's dealing with the demons that took you to the drugstore. That's that's
Ah,
where the real meat is, dude.
for sure. Okay, so we left off kind of with you had gotten, well, you've been sober for a long time. You had gotten your
Yeah.
children back. What was raising your girls like? Like, how was their life?
So their life was completely different um, once I got them back. And I say
Hmm.
that because I moved from the inner city to the suburbs. When I got them back, I had found and married my son's soon to be son's mother. So we moved to where her family lives in San Diego, and it's a completely different area than where I grew up, where my daughters were raised. So it was a
Right.
change of environment for them and kind of like a clean start, They were getting into first grade and kindergarten. So we did the Sunday school and we did the Bible study and we did the Girl Scouts and the cheerleading and the makeup, sleepovers and the nail painting and like all that Brady Bunch stuff because I had gotten to a point in my recovery where was holding down a solid job. I had a nice house where my kids were safe. I was in an area where I wasn't worried about people breaking into my house or anything like that, right? And getting loaded was not on my mind. It really wasn't. Like I had everything I'd really, really worked for in my life or really, really wanted in my life, that distanced me from where I came from, right?
Right.
Because I didn't live in the hood and I wasn't fucking on public assistance and like all four of my fucking car tires matched and I wasn't digging into my center fucking console for change for cigarettes on a Thursday night while my kids were in the bathtub. Like I was doing regular shit. I was falling asleep on the couch like Greg Brady at 9 o'clock because he's fucking tired, right?
Hmm.
And then my circle of friends gravitated towards the party people. Boop, boop, boop. And listen, you could be the new dude in town. You take me to a house party and I got a drug habit, I'm gonna find drugs at that party. Trust me. I don't give a fuck if I've been in town 10 minutes, right? So the level of comfort in a new environment with a new kind of existence, if you will, not
Hmm.
ignorant of my past, just not fucking worried about it, right?
Right.
One bump turns into a bag, one bag turns into a bundle, one bundle turns into a brick, and one brick turns into a weekend, and we lose our job. Oh, fuck. Oh shit. You
Right.
know? And it doesn't happen sometimes that fast. Sometimes it's, that process takes weeks, years, days, months, hours, doesn't matter. It depends on which addict you talk to, right? Um,
Right.
and so my marriage ended 8 years after it got started. What I left with from that marriage was full custody of my daughters at the age of uh, 12. Okay.
Okay.
Um, and my son stayed with his mom. I wanted to, like most addicts run, I wanted to run. And I wanted to move to another state where I could again get a fresh start. Not that I was running from something I had done that was bad. I
Hmm.
was running from the pain of failure.
Yeah.
And I was running from the pain of the realization of going through a hard fucking time and not having anybody really to kind of vent to, right? And I know that sounds like a pity party, and it is, and that's why I didn't fucking do it. I just split, right? But before I left the state of California, I called my daughter's mom, and we hadn't been intimately together for 10 years, right?
Hmm.
But we had been together for visits of the kids. So I said, hey, listen, I'm going to drop these kids off to you um, because I can't take them with me. I can't take them with me because I can't give you 45 days notice of where I'll be living and where I'll be working because I start in 10 days, right? So 10 is
Right.
less than 40, 10 is less than 45. So I said, I'm going to leave the girls with you for the summer while I
Hmm.
get settled and I get situated. They'll have their house, the school, and all that shit, and then come down every Christmas or whatever. I don't care, but they're coming with me, right? I was more afraid of being arrested than I was taking my kids because I didn't want them to see me get arrested,
Right.
if that makes sense, right? And so she says, "Oh yeah, let me be, the mom I've always, needed to be for them." And I was like, "I don't fucking trust you as far as I can throw you uphill in the fucking snow covered in honey, but okay." Um, and I dropped them off. And 3 weeks later, I was served with papers in the state of Oregon for custody of my daughters that their mom filed after 10 years of absent parenting. And um, I came back to California because those were my kids. And I wasn't going to let the state or another man that thought he had to raise my kids. Um, I was going to be an active part and a presence in their life because my dad wasn't in mine.
Right.
And I fucking deserved that. And so it's too late for me to get it, so I wanted to give it to my kids because we're humans and we all fucking deserve that shit.
Right.
And so I did, and I fought in court, and I went to every visit that they didn't show up to, and I didn't sit there and cuss her out and yell and scream. I cried. I cried because I was a dad that wanted to not only love my kids because they needed the love, but I wanted to love my kids because I needed to feel like I could love somebody and make them feel safe.
Right.
I wanted that. I wanted that validation because at the time I felt like shit about myself. I felt like shit and I was clean. And so I came home and um, I didn't have a place to live, so I slept in a park in my truck. Um, and I fought in court and I lost. I lost custody of my kids, and with that came visitation that she really struggled to show up for, and um, parents in different homes. So she talked a lot of shit and made me really angry, and that hurt the kids too, you know? So,
Right.
so as they get older, um, I'm home and I'm working and I've got a new relationship and my son's mother gets arrested for drugs. And so I have to go get him. Now I'm in a relationship with a lady in San Diego. And um I tell her, hey, we got to get a bigger house. I'm going to get my boy. And she says, well, I don't want to raise another kid. And I said, well, fucking, I'll see you later. I'll be out in 2 weeks. And I completely understand and I love you. And I got to go because my kids are more important to me than anything. Um, so I went and got custody of my kid, my son. And um, in the middle of all that, I had to grieve the suicide death of my daughter. You know, at 17 years old, she, as a result of domestic violence and internet bullying and parental alienation and just general fucking dysfunction, she chose to end her life, you know, in the garage of her mom's house. Yeah. And that was a trip. I did that clean. That was that was stone cold sober and clean. Um, Matter of fact, the day that she died on March 26th, the first place I went after the coroner left was to a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous that I had been to for 4 years straight, every
Right.
fucking Wednesday. Every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m., the wall in San Diego, Normal Heights, on Holly Street, off of Adams Avenue. I sat in that room and I said, my name is Marcel and I'm an addict. My daughter just fucking hung herself and I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to go to the dope house or whether to go to the gun store because I feel like killing everybody because I feel like my whole world is gone. That's what I feel like. But what the actual truth is that my daughter ended her life. And I don't have the opportunity or the ability to do that. So I have to find coping mechanisms to make sure that I'm here because I can't do that, right?
Right.
Because no one can give you what a survivor of suicide loss really wants. What do they want? They don't want money. They want that body back. They want those second chances back, right?
So
And
now
we can't.
go ahead.
Uh-huh. Yeah, go ahead.
In the time before all of this happened, had you still been in contact with your daughter, or was it kind of that because you had lost custody and you were going through this with her mom that she hadn't really been speaking to you, or
It was more like, um, I like to just to describe it to people like this. I was the fire department that was the furthest away from the house when the fire started. And so I only got called to interact with my kids when it was trauma resolution, when it was de-escalation, when it was um, conflict mitigation, because their mom had no idea who the fuck these girls were. She'd been absent for 2/3 of their emotional fucking life. And they'd lived with a guy, their
um,
dad.
tell you?
Yeah, they lived with me for 2/3 of their formative emotional life, you know, and they go to their mom and their mom's like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. You know, where you have dinners with dad and we're talking about how stupid boys are, you know, and dad's picking you up in the middle of the day because there's a Kelly Clarkson concert and we're fucking screaming the lyrics to the song going down the freeway, ditching school, right?
Right.
To a woman who just doesn't know who you are, right? So the females would argue because my daughters were growing into womanhood. And with womanhood, they have their own thought process, they have their own moment of clarity, they have their own logic, right? So
Yeah.
you could tell your daughter, he's just my boyfriend, and your daughter could be like, bitch, no, he is not. Right?
Yeah.
Because you're two different people and you're growing into two completely different people, right? So those
Mhm.
natural conflicts occurred. And because her mom lacked the ability to possess appropriate coping skills, it escalated into something that was volatile. Then they would call dad and say, get me out of here. I fucking hate it. This is bullshit. Or I'd get the come get your fucking kids. Right.
Right. Did
And
you
then
feel
you,
like it was like warning signs that, I mean, I know obviously like
I knew that she was going through some stuff. Right. And that was one of the things that I had to process most was being being present, like and aware and like conscious of what's going on, not only with yourself emotionally, but with the people that are around you. It can be really fucking hard to get your point across and say, hey, I see this happening. I
right,
know this is scary. I know this is bad. I don't hate you. I want to help you. I don't care who does it first. I'm not doing it for popularity. I want to fucking help you, right? That shit gets ignored.
right.
Or it gets mislabeled as someone being jealous, possessive, right?
Yeah.
Controlling, and it's not. And so I saw the parental alienation. I
Mhm.
put a name to the action rather than, oh, this she's my baby mom's a fucking bitch. No, no. I knew that getting into it because I had a relationship with her for 10 years before we had babies.
Right,
Okay. So I knew who she was. I didn't know who she was as a parent. And so I was learning these things. And as I learned them, I learned their name. I learned what parental alienation was. So that was a factor. I knew what domestic violence was because I grew up in it. That was a factor. I knew what neglect and child abuse looked like and how vast that scope was because I'm a victim of that too.
right,
So, being a person who wanted so very badly to make a difference or a different environment than what he or she grew up in, I was hyper aware of the things that were red flags,
right.
right?
So what
But
would you
look,
say is are some red flags for people out there? Like, I don't know because I feel like I have girls. So I feel
yeah,
like girls are so, I don't want to say emotional, but they are. They're so emotional and they're everything is so intense, right? Because they're growing up and they're getting all those hormones and people in school suck a lot of times. They're fighting with
right.
people. That. So how do you what do you feel are like the red flags of like, hey, this is different than everyday stuff?
When you start to feel it in your gut,
Mm, okay.
when you as a mom remember you as a child and go, ooh, girl, I remember when I was growing boobies and my butterflies and shit. And that boy said he liked me, and then he just dogged me. And then some other girl called me fat, and I wanted to eat ice cream, but I wanted to stab her in the face with a trapper keeper. Yeah, you remember that, right? So deal with your children growing up in this environment of disconnection. Grow with them in a sense of recollection, not remembrance, right? Because it's different and they weren't there, but you recall the emotions, the feelings, the settings. So
Right.
talk to your kids like they're humans, not like they're puppies, because our kids have one thing we never really wanted, and that's access to every fucking thing in the world.
Yeah, it's bad.
Like we
And like,
couldn't, if the 14-year-old me could not think about anything remotely close to what I could type in on the internet by accident and come up with like viable sources. It is insane. So we have to remain teachable, dude. We have to. And that's the biggest form of humility for me, right? I'm 48
Mhm.
years old. I've only been 48 years old for a little over like 9 months, dude, or 4 months, right? So I got to figure out what being a 48-year-old dude who's married and has adult children and adult stepkids and grandkids, what that looks like.
It
Because
looks
I
busy.
don't know of any other dude, it doesn't, it does. But I don't know of any other 48-year-old grandpas that are like really out here trying to chop it up on some on how to do it, how to make it work. Like, I could tell you how to build an engine if I built fucking engines, but I don't.
Right.
So we have to remain teachable, right?
Right. Yeah,
And
definitely.
sometimes the lessons we learn, they suck because they
They-
hurt, right? Or do they suck because they challenge us and we're scared and we're just a little bit fucking unsure and we gotta go, okay, oh, he's not the same guy. They're not the same girl,
Yeah.
you
So
know?
your other daughter, do you guys have like a good relationship now? Have you guys built your relationship back?
Who? Me and my
You're
dad?
you had two daughters, right?
Yeah,
Do you
I
have a
do.
good your other daughter now?
I'm learning how to be a dad of an adult daughter who survived childhood trauma, and that's a whole fucking nother like that's a whole new ball game. So I'm hoping that I don't suck too bad at it. I talked to her yesterday and wished her Merry Christmas. So like girls are very emotional as are boys, right? So it's really a learning process every day. Like because we're not neighbors. I don't know what she's going through like every day. I don't know if like her boyfriend's yelling at her or she's yelling at her boyfriend or like she's had a bad day and the puppy peed on the floor. I don't fucking know. So
Right.
I gotta take what I get and learn to either listen, because sometimes we just need to vent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I gotta put it in some fucking like really thought, like work, like if I gotta think about this and like reply and like you're looking for input and insight. That's the hardest part for me
Right. Learn
because I think the
want
boys
to
suck.
fix it or give a solution, or you just want to be heard.
Right. Because dads just want to fix
Mm-hmm.
shit. Right. Because that's our job. Some dads want to fix it because they don't want to hear it. That's also our job. So we got to figure out who's fucking working and then put them to work.
I've often been told I am the man in the
Right.
relationship. I'm always a fixer. Like I'm not super emotional. I'm always like I hear something, okay, and like what how do we fix it? Like I'm not gonna whine about it. I'm not gonna complain. I'm gonna try to
Yes,
fix
you
it.
are. Yes,
And
you are. You're going to whine and you're going to complain.
I'm learning how to like let things go a little bit. But I was always a single mom, so like I always had to try to figure things out, try to fix it, try to do whatever. And listen, there was no one to whine to. So
Listen,
now
I've spent hours talking shit to myself in a mirror like I was somebody else that needed to hear it. It was not therapeutic at all. It just helped me feel a little bit better.
right, right.
you know? So yeah, I get it. I get you. It's the key to really making this thing work is it ain't over until it's fucking over.
And
And you get
that's
a
the truth.
chance, you get a chance every day to make a different choice than you did yesterday. And don't let the fear of what hurt you keep you from the strength and the faith that you have to heal you. That's all, man. That's it. Because if you weren't meant to be here, you wouldn't. You're a resilient person sitting here changing things. And I don't give a shit if you change 6 things a week or 6 weeks a year. I don't care.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I try to keep that in mind is like, as long as we're here and we're growing and we're doing what we feel is the next right thing, and here trying to help other people, right, then we're doing something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but the helping people shit too, I'll be real with you, it's hard, because I've found that sometimes I will help people to replace the void of helping myself, you know? Like, oh,
Mhm.
my cup's got a hole in it. Let me pour all my water in your cup so that we can both have water. Don't worry about my cup. We're almost home. Just don't drink all the water, that kind of thing. So I have
Right.
to remember that if my cup is starting to leak, I stop.
Yeah, and you got to fix your cup before you start doing other
Gotta
stuff.
stop for a second and fix that leak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because bitches be out here thirsty.
I mean, that was kind of a
Gotta
good
throw
one.
it in there. You gotta keep it spicy. If you don't keep it spicy, then they're not gonna learn. Really. I mean, like we could do a podcast like everybody else, do like clinical fucking snoozers, or we can have a conversation with two people from completely different fucking states about the same thing and remove all of the vulnerability quite simply with a computer screen, you know?
Right. Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah,
Well,
you gotta keep it saucy.
I'm so glad I got to meet you and hear your story. It was really awesome. And a story of survival, right? Because like there's a lot of people that would have given up, but you keep going. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a quitter. Like none of us are. You're not a quitter. If you think about it, no one, listen, no one who's hearing this podcast right now, and I hope that everyone in the world hears this, you are not a fucking quitter. You have gone through your own hard shit. And sometimes in life, we come across that one or two questions on the test that make us want to cry, break our pencils, get up and leave the fucking classroom. You don't have to do that. That one or two questions doesn't make you a failure. Showing up for the test you've already won. That's it. We got to sit
The
through this shit, put our name on it, put our date on it, put 27 numbers and 27 spots and get the fuck up out of here. Right? That's what we got to do. We got to keep it
right.
moving. We got to keep learning. We got to keep living. We got to keep loving because that's how things grow. Right? You ever heard a flower cry? No. Have you ever stuck around long enough to? Fuck no. So
Very
I, you never know what people are going through. You know what? You don't know what someone's pain looks like on the outside unless you look on the inside.
right.
Right?
Yes. So is there anything else you want to tell our viewers? Anything else that you got?
Oh, anything else that I got? Oh man. All right. Oof. Give
Way to put
me,
you on the spot, eh?
yeah, right. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I will tell you the same thing that I tell myself every single day. Tomorrow needs you. Tomorrow needs you because you aren't done. You aren't. Tomorrow needs you because there's things for you to do tomorrow. My hope for you is that you understand that the things that need to be done tomorrow are things that need to be done for you. You have to take your time to build your castle and keep your house clean so that you can enjoy the view of the world around you from any room that you decide to end up in.
I love it. I do love the tomorrow needs you. By the
I
way,
do.
that's your Instagram name if they want to go follow you and stalk you.
It's the three words that I would love to tell my daughter who is resting in heaven, but I can't. So why keep that sentiment to myself when there are so many other people around me in the world that could simply use that phrase to turn a bad or a horrible day into just another fucking day? That's it, man.
Thank you so much for being
You're
here.
welcome. You're welcome.
I appreciate you.
See you
Bye bye.
later. Bye.